welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. Today we are going to be talking about the meteor, the meteor that happened in northern Utah on Saturday, caused a large boom. All three major northern Utah metro areas heard it, meaning Utah Valley or the Provo area. I haven't heard any reports from Provo itself, but I've heard Saratoga Springs, Linden, Orem, what's the other place called? Eagle Mountain, and then all throughout the Salt Lake Valley, and then all of Davis and Weber County, and then parts of southern Idaho, and a really large area. So we're going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking about what happened yesterday with the rededication of the Washington D.C. temple. We're going to be talking about Shemitah cycles. If you don't know what that is, in Judaism and on the Hebrew calendar, every 7 years is a sabbatical year. So it's like a week, and then the seventh year is like a Sabbath, right? And then we're going to be talking about Jubilees also, because there's been some interesting things said about Jubilees, and it seems like we're right on the cusp of a new Jubilee cycle, even though Jubilees aren't currently observed. That has to do with Israel and all the tribes and them being in the land that's been given to them. And we're going to get into that. So there's a lot to talk about in here. And there's also been some great comments about the meteor since I did the live stream. So we're going to put some more things together. Okay, so, yesterday was when President Nelson himself rededicated the Washington, D.C. temple. I find that very interesting. The reason why is because since he's been prophet, he's been delegating dedications to other members of not just the first presidency, but the Quorum of the 12. And I did a video about that, how that's unusual. Before, it was usually the prophet himself or a member of the first presidency. That was typically how it went. But President Nelson has been asking all quorum members and members of the first presidency to do temple dedications, and he hasn't done one yet. This is the first one since he's been president, is the Washington D.C. temple. So obviously he sees significance and importance in this temple, and of course it is. This is the nation's capital, right? And they've really used this opportunity to meet with political leaders, ambassadors, just people all across the political spectrum. They've used this like as a tool, I guess, to kind of bring the church to their minds and maybe use it as a missionary tool. A lot of very famous people went through the open house. So now it's done. Now it's rededicated and it's operational again. Inside the Washington D.C. temple, there's this new painting that's been done of the Second Coming. Let me see if I can find it. LDS Second Coming painting. Yeah, here it is right here. John McNaughton. I think that might actually be the guy that painted it. Yeah, Fine Art Company. And by the way, I've gotten like some responses from people like, you shouldn't show copyright material. You have to understand what fair use is. Fair use is where you take something that's copyrighted, you comment on it, you can show it, and as long as you're not like just flat out copying it, or saying that you made it or something like that, then you're good. That's how YouTube operates. How do you think that there's so many YouTube channels that have, especially movie review channels, that they show clips and they're allowed to do that because they're commenting. It's called fair use. These articles that I read, if I were just read the article, no commentary, and that's it, that would be a violation of copyright. But I can read through these, comment on it, which is my own material, and then then it's okay. So here's the picture, and this is in the Salt Lake Temple, or the Washington D.C. temple, in a very prominent location, which a lot of people noted. that this is the case, you know. So the Washington D.C. temple, very important, very significant, and made even more important and significant by the fact that President Nelson himself rededicated it, and that it happened one day after the meteor boom in northern Utah. Okay, now one of my subscribers, Angela McKee, she was actually there. She put an interesting comment. She says, "Folks, I've been at the first and second rededication sessions for the Washington, D.C. temple today. One more tonight. President Nelson officiated the first session. He was walking slowly, but without any help. He mentioned how many temples are under construction right now, and he said he will be announcing even more to us in October. What a beautiful day." Yes, indeed. And thanks for the comment, Angela. That's exciting. That's exciting that we're going to have more temples announced. You know, I didn't really know what to think after this last conference, because by announcing the 17 during this last conference, it completed 100 that he had announced. And I didn't know if that was like just kind of a goal that he set to announce 100, and maybe after that things would kind of slow down, or I didn't know exactly what would happen. But we have confirmation from Angela McKee that he plans to announce more in October. And then she says down here, Elder Oaks, who needed help to the seats in the second session, sad face, mentioned in his talk that we will need all these temples to resist temptations in the years coming up by practicing the endowment and clinging to temple covenants. He likened it to the saints doing endowments for the dead in Nauvoo prior to crossing the plains. And it's been a while, but he's the one that rededicated the Mesa, Arizona temple. I did a video on that, and I want to say that he said the same thing there, which, you know, kind of catches your attention, doesn't it? Because, you know, crossing the plains from Nauvoo to Salt Lake, that was a big move in church history. That was a big move. That was going to essentially the promised land, you know, the place where the church would find like a semi-permanent home. When I say semi-permanent, we know that the headquarters will change to Jackson County at some point, but it was a big move. We're still operating off of that move today. That's still currently where the church headquarters are. So the implication of this statement is, you know, I'm not going to like say what he means exactly, but we know that there are big things to come, you know. And so yeah, with President Nelson talking about that we need. Wait, was he without any help mention how they're constructed? No, the Elder Oaks, President Oaks, who said that we're going to need protection, and you get protection by going to the temples. It's not because we have to, like, the entire church has to go by foot to Jackson County, Missouri, to be within the, you know, 1,000-foot walls barricading the city. You find protection, and not just like spiritual protection, but I think literal protection. There's been comments that when you go to the temple, the angels come with you afterwards. I came across that somewhere in one of my videos. But there's protection in going to the temple. There's protection in going to the stakes of Zion. These are places of refuge. Okay, it's obviously spiritually, but also sometimes literally, like temporal safety. So, again, thank you, Angela McGee, for your comment. President Nelson put this post on his Facebook page. I'm not going to read it, but he just kind of talks about the temple. And again, it's just, you know, he took another opportunity to highlight this occasion, the Washington, D.C. temple rededication. So you might want to check that out if you weren't aware. Okay, what's next? Here's the article. I went through here. I didn't find anything that really stood out per se. I did note that you had all three members of the first presidency that were there. So it was President Nelson, President Oaks, and President Eyring. And then Elder Gong was also there, as well as the presiding bishop. And Elder Kevin R. Duncan, Executive Director of the Temple Department. So, so this was a big event. Okay, it was a big event. And then let's see, wasn't this one? I also wanted to point out something. We've talked about how on my spreadsheet, every time that we graph key words and phrases that have to do with the second coming, there's always a lot of frequency of those words and phrases being used in the 70s, right? The 70s, for whatever reason, there was a lot of talk about second coming related things in general conference talks. And then the other spike is within the last few years. Everything else has been like relatively quiet, but the 70s and the last few years, probably starting in about 2016, I would say, those are the two big times that things spike. We've noted that in the 70s, that's when, sorry, that's when there were the plans and construction of, well, the BYU Jerusalem Center wasn't finished until the early 80s, but it was announced in the 70s. But you had the Independence Visitor Center that was done, and we know that that's been built to be a temple, part of the temple complex in the future. We have a temple in waiting in Independence, Missouri. That happened in the 70s. And then the BYU Jerusalem Center was announced in the 70s. I do believe that the Jews will build their temple. But whatever the future is for the BYU Jerusalem Center, whether it eventually becomes a temple or some other important building, I think that it's a special building, and not just because of how it's being used right now. So those two things happened in the 70s, but I didn't really realize till now that the Washington, D.C. temple was constructed in the 70s. So the 70s corresponded with like three really important temples: Washington, D.C., Independence, and then, well, sorry, I'm not going to presume for sure that the BYU Jerusalem Center will become a temple, but there was a lot of excitement and miracles that went into that center being a possibility and a reality. So I think that we should look at this as though maybe these were some of the reasons why they were talking so much about the second coming. Maybe these buildings really represent like a big milestone, like the first time that they were constructed, as far as like the general authorities and how they view the second coming timeline. You know, I don't know that they have a timeline, but I'm just talking like in general. So it's very interesting. In one other thing that happened, one other very important thing that happened at that time in 1967 was when Jerusalem was captured by Israel. That was obviously prophetic. So a lot of interesting things happening in and around that decade. All right. It looks like this happened on Fox News. You have Brett Baer that interviewed Mitt Romney with the temple in the background, so that's kind of cool. It's interesting to point out that the Washington, D.C. temple, my understanding is that it's very prominent in that area, like it really stands out. And that's why I have this picture as the first one, like you're driving down the freeway and then just bam, you see, this is what you see. And especially with the trees in the foreground, it looks gigantic. And it is a large temple. It is, but just look at that, you know. The church's presence in the nation's capital. It's definitely there. Okay, so now let's kind of talk more about the meteor. So we had the meteor happened on the 13th, where my cursor is right here. Hopefully you can see this. The next day on the 14th, that's when the Washington, D.C. temple was rededicated, and we just talked about all the significance about the Washington, D.C. temple. And I might add that I recently did a video talking about how the only temples that are not pioneer era temples that have an upper assembly room and then the lower level being like the same dimensions as the upper room are the Los Angeles temple and the Washington, D.C. temple. And we've noted how that pattern how do I put it? The Kirtland Temple was given by revelation, the design of it. And the design, the main feature is you had two identical rooms essentially, or identical floors, the same dimensions. You had one on top of another, and we correlated that with the original temple, or at least the second temple that Cleon Skousen said it had the same configuration. You had a big, quote unquote, attic that was the same size and dimensions as the lower level that had the Holy of Holies and the sanctuary. And that design seems to have carried over into these pioneer era temples as well as the Washington D.C. and Los Angeles temples. Okay, so that's another special thing about those. It's a very special temple. Okay. Oh, ha! Look at this. I didn't notice this till just now. The Washington D.C. temple was rededicated on the 17th of Av. Okay, we're currently in the Hebrew month of Av. And on the Gregorian calendar, it was the 14th, which is 2 sevens. So you got 2 sevens right there, then you got a 10 and a 7. Add that up, you got 17. And we've talked about 17 a million times on this channel. I just noticed that right now. So you had this happen on Sunday. The day before, on the 13th, that's when you had the meteor. Okay. And what we noted during the live stream is you have two Jewish, like, I guess you would call them maybe minor holidays or observances happening at that same time. The day before is Tubi Av, and then the actual day that the meteor happened was Shabbat Nachamu. And then exactly 1 week before was Tisha B'Av, or at least the beginning of it at evening on the previous Saturday, Tisha B'Av. Tisha B'Av is the commemoration, the observance of the destruction of the first and second temples, as well as other horrible things that have happened in Jewish history, including inquisitions and expulsions and stuff like that. That's been accepted as the day that those things happened. So the destruction of the temple, 1 week later, we have this meteor. Okay. Now, I want to look closer at Tubi Av and the Shabbat Nachamu. All right. So first, let's look at the 15th of Av. This is on Chabad.org. Love in Rebirth. Okay. Our sages proclaim that the 15th of Av as one of the two greatest festivals of the year, yet they ordained no special observances or celebrations for it. Okay, the 15th of Av is the most mysterious day. A search of the Shulchan Aruch Code of Jewish Law reveals no observances or customs for this date, except for the instruction that the Tachanun, Confession of Sins, and similar portions should be omitted from the daily prayers, as is the case with all festive dates. I didn't know that till so it's kind of weird. No confession of sins on festive dates. And that one should increase one's study of Torah, since the nights are beginning to grow longer, and, quote, the night was created for study. And it's an interesting thing. The Talmud tells us that many years ago, the daughters of, quote, the daughters of Jerusalem would go dance in the vineyards on the 15th of Av, and whoever did not have a wife would go there to find himself a bride. Of course, you see girls dancing, that's where you go. That's where you want to be if you're a guy. And the Talmud considers this the greatest festival of the year. Of course it is. Girls, with Yom Kippur, a close second. Now, that's something I didn't know until now. I would have figured Rosh Hashanah would have been the second greatest, next to Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur is the Day of Atonement. It's the holiest day of the year. According to this, the 15th of Av is the greatest. Only Yom Kippur is better. So, let's go back to the calendar. So, according to what we just read, the greatest day, aside from Yom Kippur itself, happened. And then the next day, you had this meteor in Salt Lake. And then you have Shabbat Nachamu. And we'll read about that. But let's continue. Uh, as the full moon of the month of Av is the festival of the future redemption. Now, pause. What is the future redemption? The future redemption, this is what the Jews refer to as when Messiah comes and the Messianic period. Okay, the redemption. So that would correspond with the second coming, from our view, the second coming and the millennium. Okay, so is this kind of getting interesting? I think so. So let me reread that with our terms. As the full moon of the month of Av, it is the festival of the millennium. As the full moon of the month of Av, it is the festival of the second coming and the millennium, marking the end of the tragedy that marred the first part of the month, the destruction of the temples. Until this day, we held siyumim and gave charity each day to mitigate our sadness and hasten the millennium, the redemption. But on the 15th of Av, this is no longer. 45 days before Rosh Hashanah, which is the head of the year, Rosh, head, Ha, the Shana, year, Rosh Hashanah. This is also the first day on which we begin to wish each other Kativa Vachamita Tova, which is, when you hover over this, it's New Year's greetings explained. So New Year's, okay. So on this day is also the first day on which we start to wish each other Happy New Year's, to be signed and sealed for a good year. That is interesting. That is interesting. And that's basically what Shabbat Nachamu is. We're going to read that as well. But it gets interesting, you guys. It gets interesting because right now we are currently in a Shemitah, right? We were talking about that before. It's a sabbatical year right now. The sabbatical year will end on Rosh Hashanah. That's when they change the calendar date. Okay. After the Shemitah, you go back to essentially the Monday of years, and then you do another week. Well, let me point something out to you really quick. On the Facebook group, Ezra's Eagle, Daniel Malo, this is my friend from Spain that was in the same mission as me. He pointed me to this post, and I talked to Rob Huff. He said it was okay for me to share this. Okay, I have the proof is down here if you want to read it. In fact, I'll read this, and he sent me a friend request. And okay, so this is okay. This is okay. Okay, this is what Rob Huff says. And by the way, I would recommend joining this group. I'm not a big Ezra's Eagle person, but I don't discount it. I think that it could very well be real. I'm not big into it. Because I want to really dig into it myself, and I started to. I plan to continue, but it just, for right now, no. Rob Huff. I wanted to add an additional data point to the post earlier from Justin Anderson. What is also really interesting about the fall of this year is that it is the end of a Shemitah cycle, a 7-year sabbatical cycle, and the end of a super Shemitah, a 7-year cycles, 49 years. And he's about to explain it here, but what happens is you have 7-year cycles, and then the next year, the 50th year, is a Jubilee. Okay? And he says, it also happens to be the start of a Jubilee 50th year on October 5th, 2022. Historically, big stuff happens when God's people have rejected him, and a Jubilee rolls around, i.e. Jewish temple destruction. It also happens to be the 70th year since the children of Israel entered the Promised Land. 70 years since the... I'm not sure what he's referring to there. Okay, whatever. That is a lot of sevens, people. Historically, major catastrophic events happen on Shemitah sabbatical years. Count back from 2022, you will land on 2015, major market instability and decline. Then 2008, housing bubble crash. Then 2000 year, I'm not going to say it out loud because it could get me in trouble here. What does God have in store for us this year? Yeah, this year and next year. When I say next year, I mean the next Jewish year, the Hebrew year, when the Jubilee begins. Now, I'm not meaning to contradict Rob Huff. I don't know exactly how he came to the conclusion that next year's a Jubilee. Because the reason why I say that is because I've gone to Chabad.org. They don't seem to indicate when it is. And the reason why is because it's not observed currently. Uh, Let me just read a small portion of this, okay? In short, the answer to your question is when is the next Jubilee year? In short, the answer to your question is that the Jubilee year is currently not observed or commemorated. The reason for this are complex and it involve many different opinions on the matter. In the following lines, I'll attempt to briefly relay the relevant issues. According to biblical law, the Jubilee is only observed when all 12 tribes of the Jewish nation are living in Israel, and as is derived from the verse, and then it shares the verse. Um, and that's all I really want to share. That's basically it. You can, if you want to read more about this, then you can. I'll put the link below. Okay. So according to Chabad, they don't know, or they don't, I couldn't find anywhere on their website that said when the next one would be, although I'm sure somebody knows. I came across this website. This is CJ News, and it's actually ChicagoJewishNews.com. What is the next Jewish year of Jubilee? This was kind of a weird article because it doesn't seem to like really match up with it. So it says in 2022, the next Shemitah year will be 2021 to 2022. Yes, that is correct. From September of last year until October this year, that's the Shemitah year. That's correct. Is 2021 a Jubilee year? And then the article says, we will once again gather in summer 2021 to celebrate the beginning of the 50th year and the cycles that lie ahead. So I don't know if this person is saying in summer of 2021. Well, summer of 2021 would have been before the Shemitah, because the Shemitah would have started in fall of 2021. So I don't know if this person is saying that they believe that the Jubilee is this Shemitah year, which doesn't really make sense because, again, the Shemitah is the year after the 49th year. So the 49th year would be a Shemitah, and then the next year would be a Jubilee. Okay. So I don't know. I'm not Jewish, but based on what we've read, that's the case, and it says as much on Chabad.org. What years are Jubilee years? The Jubilee is a particular anniversary of an event, usually occurring, The term is often used to denote celebration. Okay, that's not what I wanted. What year is 2021 on the Hebrew calendar? Okay, so there's this. It's murky. It's not really clear. I went to this. This is like some Christian website. There's like a billion of these, and they all look the same with like clouds and angels and things like that. And according to them, it says why the next Jubilee year starts in 2024. So that would be interesting if that's the case, but I don't think so, because I know for a fact that at least right now in Judaism, this is a Shemitah year. So 2024 could not be a Jubilee year because a Jubilee year comes after a Shemitah, right? So 2024 is sooner than 7 years from now. It's not after a Jubilee. So in his comment down here, he says, hey, Jared, I just listened to your Levite/Nazarite video this morning. I pulled this information from the Rock Island Book channel. They have some very interesting calculations about the tribulation. Again, I'm not a tribulation person. I think that this comes from the evangelical world, frankly. And I actually have a playlist about this. If you believe in it, that's cool, but I don't think that that's an LDS concept, and I explain why in the playlist. And he continues, but we know there's a bit of misinformation out there regarding the second coming. I was particularly interested in his math that this year, October 5th, 2022, is the start of the Jubilee. It is the 70th Jubilees. Okay, that's what he means. The 70th Jubilee since the children of Israel have entered the Promised Land. I have a bunch of information for you. You may want to take up, and I will. Yes. So thank you, Rob Huff. I really appreciate it. Okay, so whatever the case, if you take these three different sources, Rob, this Chicago Jewish News website, this standinfaith.org website, it seems like we're in that time of the Jubilee. Okay. And because officially we are in a Shemitah year, then it must be next year if everybody is calculating this correctly. And that is a big if. So I'm not going to like say it for sure, but I'm going to say it for your consideration, and you can do more research if you want to. Okay, so let's get back to this. Okay, so the 15th of Av, Friday, the Friday before the Meteor, was the beginning of the Happy New Year. Okay, the beginning of the Happy New Year. So what that means is that if the next Jewish year is a Jubilee, then this was the beginning of the Happy Jubilee. Okay, the beginning of Happy Jubilee. And especially on the 13th, because we're about to read about that. In fact, let's go on to that right now. So Shabbat Nachamu. What is that? Shabbat Nachamu, Haftarah, companion. Overview. The Shabbat following Tisha B'Av is known as Shabbat Nachamu. The name is taken from the opening word of the week's Haftarah, Nachamu, Nachamu, Ami. Comfort, comfort my people. It is the sentence that we begin the series of 7 Haftarot. Sorry, I'm trying to work on my Hebrew pronunciation because I'm learning Hebrew, so don't make fun of me. I'm still new. Like, in Hebrew speaking years, I'm still an infant. So a series of 7 Haftarot, known in Halakhic literature as Shiva de Nechmat. Now I'm all self-conscious. Thanks a lot. The 7 Haftarot of consolation. From the Shabbat after Tisha B'Av until the last Shabbat of the year, we read the deeply moving words of comfort from the Jewish people uttered by Isaiah, the prophet of the redemption, or in other words, the prophet of the millennium, the prophet of the second coming. You see that? You see how that works? You see why the 13th might be a very significant day for a meteor to go over Utah. And by the way, a couple details about the meteor before we continue on. Let's go to this right here. Okay, some people have brought up a few more details about this since we did the live stream. One of them is that, okay, so remember, the angel Moroni dropped his trumpet 2 years ago in March 18th of 2020, so 318. And this happened this year on August 13th, 813. So 318, 813. That's like a chiasmus. And I don't like to really use the word chiasmus because I'm pretty sure that specifically refers to a writing style, like a poetic writing style. So this isn't like no one's writing anything here. But it is a mirror, which goes along with the idea of chiasmus. Those two dates mirror each other in that sense. 318, 813. And that's according to how we write it in English, because European nations and other countries, they don't do their dates the same way. But that doesn't mean that it's not significant. It's interesting that this was observed by the GOES 17 lightning mapper. 17. This is like a satellite. Now, what do you have when you add 8 plus 3 plus 1? You get 12. 12 is the number of the priesthood, right? 12 is the number of Israel. So you have a 12 on one side in 2020 with Angel Moroni, and that where he puts down his trumpet and stops blowing and things go quiet. And then you have a big boom on 12 where just after the general authorities make this massive call out during General Conference in the 5th Sunday of last month for missionaries. A big boom, right? As far as missionary work goes, it was quiet for the last couple of years. So again, I don't know what this means. People that are less inclined to view things as significant would probably say, "Oh, it's just because COVID, and we just need to get our numbers back up." But I don't think so. I don't know if this is like the final push, or I don't know if this is going to be the missionary force that welcomes the millennium and are going to be doing the massive missionary work when the millennium starts. Because according to Joseph Fielding Smith, that's going to be the greatest time, the greatest need of missionary work, because many, 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 many are going to join the church at the second coming. That's what Joseph Fielding Smith said. We read that, his comment on that. So 12 and 12. Now, another thing, we were exploring the idea of the half hour of silence, right? So the first time that we kind of hear about this is Revelation chapter 8, verse 1. And when he had opened the seventh seal, there was silence in heaven about the space of half an hour. We don't really know what that means. I've looked up what general authorities have said, and I think it was in the Journal of Discourses. I can't remember. It may have even been the teachings of the prophet Joseph Smith. But somebody said that we don't really know what that half hour is, whether it's according to God's time, our time, or if it simply means a period of time. So I'm just going to say that right off the bat. We don't know. But some people recently have thought that it could mean God's time, and specifically God's time where, um, you know, one day for God is 1,000 years here on earth. And when you do the math, it comes down to a half hour equals 20.83 years, right? So keep that in mind, 20.83 years. Revelation, it happens after the seventh seal is opened. In, sorry, in DNC 88, verse 95, it says, "And there shall be silence in heaven for the space of half an hour, and immediately after shall the curtain of heaven be unfolded, as a scroll is unfolded after it is rolled up, and the face of the Lord shall be unveiled. And the saints that are upon the earth who are alive shall be quickened and be caught up to meet him. And they who have slept in their graves shall come forth, for their graves shall be opened, and they shall be caught up to meet him in the midst of the power of heaven." Okay, so basically, right after the half hour is up, that's when the righteous go to Christ in the air. Going back to Revelation 8, what's interesting is that this happens, if this is talking about the same half hour, and I think it is, I don't know. This happened after the seventh seal was opened. Now, this is one thing that I think that the Jody Stoddard timeline probably does have right. I wouldn't be surprised if the Palmyra Temple was the opening of the seventh seal. Okay, I don't think that we can get too specific as far as like calculating the exact, day, hour, second, things like that. But this is what I do know. Okay, in 1999, we had this rare tornado that ripped through downtown Salt Lake. It nicked the Salt Lake Temple. And that was just months before the turn of the millennium on the Gregorian calendar, and before just I think it was like half a year, less than half a year actually, before the dedication of the Palmyra Temple. Okay. When we read on the church website, it says that each seal corresponds with 1,000-year period of Earth's temporal existence, and it even gives a chart where it says, so like, in fact, I should have pulled that up. Let me see if I can pull that up. LDS seals 1,000 years book of Revelation. Yeah, here it is right here. remember that these books go through church correlation. Okay, there's always people that want to argue against the church publications for some reason. This has gone through correlation. It's not just people's opinions. This went through the correlation committee, which is overseen by general authorities. Okay, and even if it didn't go through the correlation committee, the general authorities, they see these things. It's not like they don't read what the church puts out. So there's not going to be a big mistake that's going to be put in here. So it looks like we're looking at the New Testament student study guide, and it says here the summary of the 7 seals. The first seal, the first 1,000 years, corresponds with Enoch and the white horse. Again, there was somebody that was arguing with me recently, like, no, you need to go back and read that and get educated. And no, Joseph Smith said that everything in the book of Revelation has to do with things that happen in the future. And I already know that quote because we already did a video about that. And the person that read that wasn't reading it correctly. It was talking about, I'm not going to get into that, but that is true. That most of the things have to do with things in the future, but this comes from him, and it comes from the Doctrine and Covenants, and it's passed through. It's still the position of the church today. Otherwise, it wouldn't be in this manual. First 1,000 years is the first seal and the white horse. There's people think that these 4 horses are going to be something that happens in the future. No, they're not. The first one happened the first 1,000 years. The red horse was the second 1,000 years. The black horse was the third 1,000 years. The pale horse was the fourth 1,000 years. Okay, then no more horses. And so, anyway, you have the 7th seal, which is the 7th 1,000 years. Gosh, there was another table. This isn't the one I was looking for exactly. Let me see if I can find it. Maybe it's here. Let's see. This is the ensign, but this might have 1,000. So the 6th seal covers the 6th 1,000-year period, which generally would be about 1,000 AD to 2,000 AD. Okay, so it's by this point, I think it's probably safe to assume that we're in the 7th seal. All right, something that goes along with that is this. Let me pull up my spreadsheet. Wasn't planning on doing this, but let's go ahead and do it. Phrase tracker. Let me unhide all the columns. Let me find the one that has to do with the millennium. Okay, so this column right here is the column for millennium. And what you see is, there it is right there. There's a big old spike right there in 1999 in the year 2000, right? Of course, you could be like, well, of course, it's the millennium. Of course, but maybe the millennium was a little bit more significant than what we realize. Okay, they talked about it a lot in the years leading up to it, and then it just stops. There's no more talk of the millennium from 2005 to 2019, and then it picks up again. All right, so here we have in, I'm not sure if this is an institute manual, but in one of the manuals, either seminary or institute, you have the definition there, and then it was put in the ensign. Okay, they're not wrong. This is what the seals are, you guys. I've heard all sorts of like very weird explanations for what these are. People like really want to shoehorn their ideas into the future. The 4 horsemen and the seals that are yet to be open. It doesn't make any sense. I'm sorry. I don't mean to be rude, but it doesn't make any sense. It's saying it here in plain English, and these aren't the only 2 places. I still didn't find that table that I wanted to show you. So, anyway, so as we're talking about the meteor, okay, why am I bringing all that up? So with the whole thing about 20.83 years. Okay, if you take 20 plus 2000, you get to the year 2020, right? And then we're just going to say that the 0.83, we're just going to call that another year because that's the better part of a year. That would take you to 2021, right? So if this definition is correct, and I'm not saying that it is at all, I have no idea. But if it is, then that means the half hour of silence would have been over in 2021. And that could be true. That could be true. But everyone knows that the real millennium started in 2001. Why is that? It's because there was no year zero. Okay. So the first year um, of after Christ, the common era was the year 1. So if you add 2000 to the year 1, you get to 2001. By that point, 2,000 years had gone by. As soon as you get to January 1st, 2001, 2,000 complete years have already passed. You had year 1, 2, 3, and then all the way up to the year 2000, which would have been the 2000th year. The first year was the first year. And then the first year was done by the end of that year and the beginning of the new year. So it's just like that. You count 1 to 2000, and once you're at the end of the year 2000, 2000 complete years have taken place. And then in 2001, that's when you start a new 2000 year cycle, if you're counting it that way. So if we look at that, again, you take the year you take the year 2001, you add 20, that takes you to 2021, and then you add 0.8, or about another year. It brings you to where we're at right now. And what just happened? I don't know, but we had this big, loud event that affected the headquarters of the church and all the people that live in this area. Most everybody heard it, and it shook their houses. And this event seems to connect with the angel Moroni putting down his trumpet. It's almost like that was like a reminder that, hey, we're in the half hour of silence, or I don't know what. All I know is that on 3/18, his trumpet fell. 2 days later, First Presidency puts out their letter saying that the missionaries are coming back home. And then 2020 and 2021 have not been good for convert baptisms in numbers. And now in 2022, on 8/13, we have like the opposite event happen. Instead of it going quiet, stopping, the angel being put, or the trumpet being put down, you have literally in the sky that you usually associate with angels and heavenly things, a thing that, and they believe it's a meteor. It's probably what it was, because of the meteor shower that's going on right now. But you have this large meteor that causes this really big boom, in contrast to things going quiet. And this is after this last general conference that was a big, big push for missionary work. I'm sorry, but I see that as beyond coincidence. And I'm sure that most of you do too. That's why you're watching this channel. Another interesting thing of note is these pixels right here. We don't have like the full trail, but where it was picked up on GOES 17, it started, and I'm assuming, I don't know for sure, I'm assuming that the path was this way. I don't know why I'm assuming that, but whatever the case, it looks like it went over Davis County. And I think that now this is like more on the minor side, but Davis is related to Davies. That's my last name. Davies is just a variation of Davis. And those two names are derived from David. Okay. So I don't know if there's like anything to that, but that's kind of interesting. That maybe that kind of factors in a little bit. So It just, I don't know. I feel like there's too many things surrounding this to where it can't just be arbitrary. There was one person that was like, well, this kind of thing happens all the time in the US alone, at least a couple times a year. And I don't doubt that that's true, but it's never happened in Salt Lake, or like in the Salt Lake area, or at least like to where Salt Lake could hear it. I'm not aware of any time in Utah history that it's happened. So for Utah, it's extremely rare. And the timing is extremely interesting that this is happening at a time when Jews are looking forward to the millennium or the redemption, starting with Tubi Av. And I also want to point out Tubi Av. We were looking at this last time on the live stream. It's like a day for marriage. Okay, they have. Let's see, Tubi Av marriage. Let me see if I can find something for this. This is jewishmuseum.org. Tu B'Av is a popular day for weddings in Israel and Jewish communities around the world. Okay. So, what do we know is one of the symbols of the second coming? It's this right here on the screen. This is a symbol of the second coming, a marriage. And the Jews are marrying on that day. It's the most important day according to Chabad, like the most, like one of the holiest days, only behind Yom Kippur itself. Marriage is going on. They're reading Isaiah the next day on Shabbat, and they view him as the prophet of the millennium or the redemption when Messiah comes. So to anyone that's like, well, these things happen, it's not like it's that, it doesn't have to be that rare, looking at it from the whole world. It's rare for Utah. It's rare for the Salt Lake area. And what's even rarer is that it happens around this time. Jews getting married, Jews looking forward to the millennium, Jews reading Isaiah. The next day, on the 14th, and on the 17th of Av, the Washington D.C. temple being rededicated by President Nelson himself. It's too much. It's too much. It's not grasping at straws. This is all you could view this as like a 3-day event. Tu B'Av, Shabbat Nachamu, and the rededication of the, what's it called? The Washington, D.C. temple. And then on top of that, the fact that we're in a Shmita year, and that this Tu B'Av and Shabbat Nachamu are leading up to what could be a Jubilee that will start on, what was it again? On the evening of the 25th of September. It's too much. It is too much. Okay? That's my opinion. You can think whatever you want. Another thing I wanted to point out, and this will probably be the last thing I think for this video. We noted a long time ago, on September 17th, actually, of last year, my channel was brand new. It had only been going for about a month, and I noticed that, because I was watching the church news website, I still do every day, and all these renderings have been coming out of these new temples that have been announced. Okay, they've gotten to the point where they're getting renderings, and you'll notice that it's very rare, if not just completely absent, that you see a new temple rendering that has an angel Moroni on top. And I got all sorts of comments, like I always do, of, well, it's just because of like zoning restrictions, and it's because maybe the church is trying to save money. blah, blah, blah. No, no. I make the case in the video that President Nelson, there's been a distinct shift. He's even said that the church is at a hinge point. It's under President Nelson that he's introduced the new church symbol, which features Christ walking through the tomb door. So Christ is now the official symbol, and we don't call it a logo, it's a symbol. It is the official symbol of the church. And President Nelson also stressed the using of the church's full name. The reason why is because when you say Mormon or when you say LDS, it omits the most important part, which is Christ. And that's why I changed my channel name. But this channel was originally Latter-day Homestead, but I quickly changed it as I was doing my study, and I changed it to Christian Homestead so that I put the most important part in the name of my channel. So, with the appearance of Christ in the symbol and the timing, I don't think that it's because of, oh, I need to save money or zoning restrictions, because this is happening with all these different temples all throughout the world. It's not just like one place. You go to any given one of these temples, okay? I'm on churchofjesuschristtemples.org. It's a private website, but they do a great job at collecting all sorts of information about temples. You go to any given temple that has a rendering. Let's find one. Sorry. Maybe I should have had some pulled up. Burley, Idaho Temple, no Angel Moroni. Yorba Linda, no Angel Moroni. That's a beautiful temple, by the way. I really like that. Smithfield, Utah, no Angel Moroni. Let's see, what about... There's got to be some down here under announced. Cape Town, South Africa, no Angel Moroni. Why is that significant? Why am I associating this with the Meteor? Well, because the Meteor seems to be associated with the Angel Moroni dropping his trumpet. So we have one instance where he literally dropped his trumpet. But on top of that, we have all these temples that are no longer being constructed with Angel Moronis, or Angels Moroni, I should say. And that's significant because the Angel Moroni is viewed to anybody that sees it as an angel making like a warning call. You know, isn't that what angels do? When you read the book of Revelation, they're blowing their trumpets and it's like a warning call to the world. So could it be that right now we're at a time where we're in the winding up scene? Maybe the time of the Gentiles is over. And before you say, well, but we're still doing missionary work is not going to stop. The end of the time of the Gentiles doesn't mean that missionary work stops. It continues into the millennium. Okay? But the focus, like the Lord's focus, will no longer be on the Gentiles. It'll be on the Jews. And I think that you can make an argument that that's been happening for a while now. When you look at the Messianic Jewish movement that started in the 60s and 70s and is growing at a rapid pace, there's many Jews that are turning to Christ, seemingly on their own. And I've talked about the possibility that John the Revelator and the three Nephites may be among them. We know that they can appear in visions, in dreams. They don't like literally have to be in your presence to communicate with you. I've done videos about that, about Native Americans that have encountered the three Nephites in their dreams. That can be found in the Journal of Discourses, by the way. So, what I see here, in my opinion, is we see an angel dropping his trumpet, and we see that angels are no longer on our temples because that period of time may be over as far as like the main missionary work effort in going to the Gentiles. And with this increase in call for missionaries, it very well could be that it's the final push, or it may be these are going to be the missionaries at the beginning of the millennium, if it happens within the next year or two or three, who knows. But you can do this with any You can do this with any temple. Recent, here's the Querétaro, Mexico temple. Gorgeous. Okay, Montpelier. There's nothing for Montpelier, Russia. Let's just look at a few, just to see if we can find some more. Come on, there's got to be some of these ones that are announced that have renditions or renderings. I mean, here, let's go to temples, chronology. So basically, in the video, if you want to watch it, the sound quality is bad, but I noticed that it was in 2018 that there was the change. About half of the temples announced in 2018 will have angels Moroni, and then half of them don't. And then every year after that, there's no more angel Moroni on any of the temples, on any of the renderings. Okay, so let's start with Helena, Montana. So these are ones that are constructed now. Let's go to McAllen, Texas. Beautiful. I love that Spanish style, like that Spanish mission style. Moses Lake, Washington Temple, Helena, Montana Temple, or Donetta, Philippines Temple. Let's see when this was announced. It was announced all the way back in 2010. Okay. It has the Angel Moroni. Orem, Utah Temple, Taylorsville. I lived in Taylorsville for a little while. Never got to go to the temple because it's recent. Abidjan, Ivory Coast. When was this announced? Back in 2015. Okay. Because after they announce it and they drop the plans, they're not going to just like change it, I don't think. Red Cliffs, Utah. Announced October 2018. So it'd be among that group that was announced in that year, but that do have Angels Moroni. Casper, Wyoming. Gosh, the temples nowadays, they are just mind-blowing to me. Salta, Argentina. This was 2018. Puebla, Mexico. Announced 2018. Oops. Coban, Guatemala. Announced 2019. Tallahassee, Florida. Beautiful. Deseret Peak, Utah. Auckland, New Zealand temple. Mendoza, Argentina temple. San Pedro Sula, Honduras temple. So anyway, I'm not going to go through all of them, but you get the idea. And you can do it yourself. Come to this website. Plot them. Make a graph or something like that, a table. And that's the case. So you have to think, and those explanations, it's just because we're trying to save money. We don't skimp when it comes to temples. Okay? No. All the finest things and everything that's supposed to be there goes on the temple, including, if appropriate, the Angel Moroni. And then you can see that we're looking at so many different places, different countries. Look, Philippines. We just went from Elko, Nevada to the Philippines. It's not zoning restrictions. Oh, now we're in Africa, Nairobi. You think that it just coincidentally, all these temples, they all have zoning restrictions. Now we're in Cambodia on something that doesn't even look like a temple. It doesn't look like a typical LDS temple. It looks like a Buddhist temple, which is awesome. I love that the temples reflect the cultures that they're in. Now we're in South America. You really think that it's zoning requirements. Now we're in the Pacific, the Pago Pago American Samoa Temple. Just give me a break. Grand Junction, Colorado. Okay, that's enough. All right, so for those that have eyes to see, those that have ears to hear, I think that the message is pretty clear that we're in a new phase, that it's not the same as it was in the 90s, the 80s, or even the 2000s, or even the 2010s. We're in a brand new phase. Interesting things are happening. The church and church history seems to line up or meet up with Jewish holy days and observances. Okay. It's like they parallel each other, even to this day. So it doesn't seem like any of these have become irrelevant, like they have for some Christian churches. So yeah, I think I covered it all. I may have missed a couple things. So if you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, and then put those things that I may have missed in the comments below. Any additional information, any thoughts that you've had, if you experienced the meteor, tell us what it was like for you and where you're at, because it'd be nice to see like just how far south it was heard, or to any extreme really, east, west, north. Like the video if you liked it, share it with anyone that might find this interesting, and I'll talk to you guys later.